Okay, perfect. So now we should be recording so we can get started. So welcome back to everybody that's been coming to our sessions for the last few weeks. If you're new, welcome. It's lovely to see you. If you're watching on YouTube and you do want to register for the live sessions, you can do that on our website. So you can go onto our website and register for them. If you are new and you haven't yet been sent all the information, the format of tonight is that we start off with a quick little quiz, just a little bit of fun, generally around ethics. I might mix it up a little bit next week, but generally around ethics, and then we complete a spreadsheet. You'll be sent out the pre-work latest by around lunchtime of the day of the class, so on the Wednesday. And at the end of the session, you will be sent over a link with any files. Can people just make sure they are staying on mute, just because it gives me a little bit of feedback? That'll be great, thank you. You'll be sent out a link at the end, which will have access to all of the past recordings and all of the past pre-work and also the answers for each of those. So if you are registering on YouTube late, don't worry, I do periodically send it out throughout the week. It's also on my out of office. So if you do email me, you can just pop me an email saying I want to get the out of office, just in case I'm not picking up my emails. It means that you can actually access all the Dropbox links yourself. Good, hopefully that makes sense. Does anyone have any questions on any of that before we get started? Super, someone's still not on mute. Can you please all just make sure you are on mute? It sounds like you're eating your dinner. Just gives me a little bit of feedback if that's all right. I do keep muting people, I don't know why it keeps doing it. Lovely, okay, let's get started then. So as always, we're going to start with a Menti quiz. So generally people will use their mobile phone for this. If you don't have one, don't worry, you can still play along on the screen. You don't actually have to have access to be able to do it. But this is the quiz we're doing this evening. So if you go to www.menti.com and pop in the code 420310, it will show me that people start to join the room. If you haven't got access to another device, don't worry, you can still answer the questions on the screen. The whole point is that you hopefully learn something from these questions. If you are wanting to pop an answer in the chat box, that's also fine, but I just ask you to wait until the last 3 seconds to press enter on your answer, just to give everybody else a fair chance to be able to answer our questions. Good. So we've done one of these each week. All I do if you're new to the sessions is just pick some random questions. I pick 5 questions as we go through the syllabus, generally around ethics. They're just completely random. There isn't any logic as to where they've come from on our options. And you get points for getting a correct answer, and you get more points for being the fastest. So obviously we do have a leader at the end, which is fun. You can pick any name you want. Please don't be offensive though, this is being recorded, so it will be sent out for other students. So I'd be really appreciative if you keep them clean, which will be great. Lovely, so we've got 74 people on there, so I think most of you are on. So I'll just give it another 30 seconds and then we'll get started. So don't worry if you can't play along live, you can still answer the questions and you can tally up your own answers. Super, let's give it a go then. Let's see how we get on this week. So let's start our quiz. First question then, guys. So it's on the screen, but it's also on your phone. If you were to report money laundering, oh, hang on a minute, this isn't question number 1. Sorry about that, guys. You should all still be in there. It should bring you all back in. Just give it a second just to update. Don't know why that's happened. Sorry about that. Okay, looks like we're all back in. Let's start again. Question number 1. Ellie has been asked to review the accuracy of a depreciation policy she helped to design. This could be a threat to ethics, but what threat would it be? Advocacy, self-interest, familiarity, intimidation, or self-review? So you've always got 45 seconds to answer on the first question. Give you a little bit longer because we're just starting off with our Menti quiz. Which one? If you're not sure, when you're down to the last few seconds, have a guess. because in the exam you wouldn't want to leave it blank. So say which one to you think would be the most sensible answer here. So obviously we've got our ethical principles that we looked at on week 1. So if you want to re-watch those lectures, and you've got your threats as well. Let's see how we get on. Brilliant, perfect. So 46 people getting that right there. You're absolutely right. It's always great when the one that I'm looking at springs up to the top. You're absolutely right. It's a self-review threat. Think about what's happening in the scenario. She's been asked to design a depreciation policy, which means she's come up with it. It's her work. She has decided that it's going to be 25% reducing balance, or she's decided they're going to depreciate over 6 years, or she's decided they're going to do 25% on a reducing balance basis. So it's her work. If she now goes on to evaluate the accuracy of it, she's basically evaluating the work that she prepared. So if she didn't want to admit that something went wrong, she could hide it. So you're looking there at a self-review threat. Super. Practice, practice, practice these. They come up a lot. There is sometimes some overall review. So whoever just asked that question, you're actually labelled as Rebecca Empson. So if you could change your name, that would be great. Why do you think she's got a self-interest threat? So the question is, does she have a self-interest threat also? What made you think that? Okay, not answering me. So the question is, does she have a self-interest threat only? Also, generally when we're talking about self-interest threat, you're going to get some sort of financial reward back from something. So you'll see that someone's invested in some shares, they've been asked to also audit the company, and they're more likely to obviously come back and give that information. But however, she has designed it, so if she did turn around and say that it was then wrong, she obviously could maybe be in trouble. So I can see your thought process there. Because she designed it, she wouldn't want to say there was a problem, because she wouldn't want it obviously to affect her, sorry, I don't know if that's the same person raising their hand, because everybody's name Rebecca, sorry. So I can see your point there, but I would definitely say in this question, they're quite clearly pushing you towards a self-review threat. Good, perfect. Let's have a look at what that did to our leaderboard then. So 46 people got it right. So out of those 46 people, who was the quickest person to be able to do that? Becky's the fastest. She also got it right. So right now she's at the top of our leaderboard. Let's see what happens over the next 4 questions to see whether that changes over. Okay, question number 2. Well done, Sarah. First time on the leaderboard. Let's see if you can stay on there. You're having a Zoom issue here. There we go. Question number 2 then. What is the sentence if you are found guilty of a criminal offence? Fine or imprisonment, court case, paid damages, disqualified as a director, or compensation. So you've got 17 seconds. If you're not sure, do the one that you think is the most logical to you and see how you would have got on. Remember, in the exam, you may have a drop down, and this could be a question that comes up. So you could actually have this as an answer. Last second, let's have a look. Brilliant, 68 people there, absolutely spot on there. So 68 people getting that right, so that's absolutely fantastic. You're absolutely right. We've spoke about these quite a lot over the few weeks. We've been talking about what are the sentences for money laundering, for example. So fine and or imprisonment, absolutely. Does anybody know that if that said what is the sentence if you are found guilty of a civil offence, what is the sentence for a civil offence? Just pop it in the chat box if anybody does know that. Not quite, I'm talking more general. So if you're talking about fine or imprisonment, what would it be? So compensation, damages, that's the one I'm looking for. Well done, Louise, absolutely spot on. So you would have to pay damages, which is essentially compensation. So it's trying to compensate you for what you have lost. So absolutely, it would be damages, or also something that isn't strictly in your syllabus, but also something called an equitable remedy. An equitable remedy is that if you are paid compensation and it's not enough to actually put you back into the position you were had this not happened, then Sarah's just asked, I'm not sure I've covered this in my book, which section would it come under? In our notes, it comes under law. So it's just a section right at the beginning of ethics about the law. So you don't need to know much more than I'm saying here, to be honest. I'm just trying to give you a bit of background, because we learn a lot of crimes and they may ask you what would be the punishment for that. So I'm kind of going into a little bit more detail to kind of show you what the punishment was. So example, money laundering, we've spoke about it, and we've spoke about fine and or imprisonment. So that is a criminal offence. So the fact that you know that it's a criminal offence, even if you can't remember how long they'd go to prison, for example, you can have a look there and you can say, right, well, it needs to be a fine or imprisonment. If it's a civil crime, then you're going to be paying damages or have equitable remedies. So damages is compensation, so you will receive some money. Equitable remedies, the word as such isn't in your syllabus, but what you'll see, if I was, for example, to be suing my plumber because he'd come into my kitchen and he'd flooded it, I might be given back some damages, so some compensation, but actually I might not want money if I've got no kitchen and everything's been damaged. So what might happen is he might be told by the courts to pay over some damages to me, but he might also be told that he has to come along and actually fix my kitchen, and that would be an equitable remedy. So there's just a little bit of background there. So if it comes up in your exam, it's less likely to say what is the punishment. It's more likely to say what would the punishment be for money laundering, and you'd need to know that it was fine or imprisonment. Or if they were talking about something like negligence, that's a civil crime, then you'd know it would be damages or an equitable remedy. Good. It is probably in your notes somewhere, but it might not just be a really big part of it. Good. Let's have a look at those 68 people then, how that affected our leaderboard here. Who was the quickest? Right at the bottom, but Emily's right at the top there, so she's taken over. Let's see how she goes on the next 3 questions then. So question number 3, sticking with law. Which of the following would be an example of a civil crime? So 4 of these are criminal, 1 of them is civil. So money laundering, terrorist financing, bribery, fraud, or a breach of contract. So 4 of them, you'd have to pay a fine or end up in prison. 1 of them, you may have to pay damages or have some equitable remedies. So which one of those would be an example of a civil crime? You've got 4 seconds. Take a guess if you're not sure. Super, well done. 68 people getting that right with a breach of contract. Spot on. We have covered all of these other ones in our research in terms of what are the penalties. So if you haven't seen those past lectures, you can watch the recordings back when I send them out. But a breach of contract here would be a civil crime. So if you breached your contract, maybe your employment contract, for example, it may be that you need to pay your company some compensation. You might also have an injunction against you, which stops you working for the company or stops you working for a competitor, for example. So that would be an example of an equitable remedy. Good, okay, let's see what that did to our leaderboard. Good, Emily the fastest, so she's going to remain at the top of the leaderboard, and there's 2 questions to go. So let's see how we get on with these final 2 questions then. Regulating the accountancy body. So state which body in the UK. So you've probably got a diagram in your notes. So right at the top, there is a body. Can you remember which one is there? So state which body in the UK is responsible for regulating the accountancy profession. Codes and Standard Committee, the Financial Reporting Council, the Executive Committee, the Conduct Committee, and the Audit and Assurance Committee. So which one sits at the top of that diagram? I'm sure you've all got it somewhere in your notes. Fabulous, brilliant. 66 people getting that right. And I'm really glad about that, because right at the beginning, when I asked you what topics did you want to cover, this was one of the topics that you wanted to cover. So it's obviously something that everybody's gone away and done a lot of revision on. And you're absolutely right. It's the Financial Reporting Council that's responsible for regulating the overall accountancy provision. They've got all of these people underneath them to just make sure, as part of your revision, that you know which each of these bodies are responsible for. Good, well done guys, really happy to see that. Let's have a look at our leaderboard, and then we've got one question left. Emily the fastest again, so she's going to stay at the top of our leaderboard, which is fabulous. Let's see if she can hold on to it then for our last question. Oh no, I've messed it up. Oh no, sorry about that guys, I've messed it up. I don't know why that's done that. So Emily's going to stay our leader, and let's have a little talk about this last question then, because I don't know why for some reason it's filled in. It's just going to be one of those days in terms of technology, isn't it? Now, we covered this quite a lot last week, which is the reason why I wanted to pop it into this question. So if you were to report money laundering directly to the National Crime Agency, you would have to fill in a what? It is a SAR. Now, I know it's a SAR, and I know everyone was going to say a SAR, which is why I wrote here different meanings for what SAR could be, to make sure that you knew it. So the correct answer, as you can see, is suspicious activity report. It does look like 24 people have answered that, which is a bit strange. Not really sure. That must have been when you did it right at the beginning. But you're absolutely right, it is a suspicious activity report. So let's just add something extra in here, because that question did mess up. Can anybody tell me, we did cover this last week, what are the 3 things that we need to fill in if we are filling in a SAR? So what's the 3 things that we're going to need to write in our SAR if we are completing it and sending it to the National Crime Agency? Perfect, Fran. Very nice. Who, what, and where. They're my phrases, by the way, guys. So well done for listening last week. That's absolutely spot on. Perfect. Well done, Alison. Good. You're absolutely right. So for anyone that didn't tune in last week with us, when you fill out a suspicious activity report, you will need to send information as to who you are filling it out for, what you are filling it out for, and where they can find the information. So if I give you an example, I might say, Jonathan, that runs the accountancy firm on the corner, I think that he is committing money laundering, so that would be my who. What do I think he's doing? Well, I'm not sure. I asked him about an invoice, and it looks like he couldn't give me any answers. He went a little bit sketchy. So I'm just a little bit suspicious that I've seen something unusual in his accounts. And in terms of where, it's where you would find it, because the National Crime Agency are going to turn up on his door. And if they knock on the door and they say, hi, Jonathan, we're from the National Crime Agency, we'd like to come and have a look at all of your books. Well, where do they start? What he's going to do is he's going to run away, and he's going to hide any evidence of any money laundering that might have been going on. So you want to say, right, maybe in January's bank statement on the 13th of January, there was a £50,000 deposit that I asked Jonathan about, and he couldn't answer me. So then that means they can turn up and they can say, hi, Jonathan, we're from the National Crime Agency. Can we please see your bank statement from January? And they know exactly where to start, and it means that he can't obviously hide that information. So you're absolutely right. Who, what, and where. Good. So sorry about that last question. It's a bit of a shame. I don't even know if it's going to change our leaderboard now. It might do. Not really sure what's happening now. Oh, good. Emily ended up staying at the top. Jake, I think, probably just didn't answer the question there. Fabulous. So well done, Emily, for being this week's winner. But the most important thing is if there was something that you didn't know in that quiz, you're now comfortable with it. That's the most important thing. There's absolutely no point me picking 5 questions that everybody knows every single week, because it means that no one's going to learn anything, and these revision sessions don't obviously give you any benefit. So the most important thing to me, if there was something there that you didn't know, that you now do know, then it's been a success. And that's a good thing that we did that quiz. Good, perfect. So I realised it had been quite a few weeks since we'd looked at this. Now, I sent this out in week 1 to anybody that's been with us all the way since the beginning. It seems like quite a long time ago now. I think we've been doing these for a couple of months. Now I'll send it out. In fact, I'll put it on the Dropbox for everybody. And now this is just an overview as to the kind of things that I think you could be tested on. This isn't an official thing. It's not going to be in your notes because it's something that I wrote. So it's something that I think that potentially these are the things they could test you on in a spreadsheet. So what I've done is go through the syllabuses and I've said, right, what are the likely things that they could maybe test you on that lead yourself to actually do it on a spreadsheet? A couple of them I still think could be quite difficult. Job and batch costing, I'm not actually sure how they would actually test you on that. That could be quite difficult. But most of them, they're the kind of things that they could throw into questions. So just before we do our task, I just wanted to quickly talk you through this, because really, these are the things that you need to be going back to your old modules and revising. I've covered as many as I can in these sessions. Last week was slightly different because we didn't look at a recap last week, but I've covered as much as I can, but we cannot cover all of them. So you need to make sure that you go back through your old notes and you practice these. What I would recommend at this stage is that you go back through your notes and then you use a spreadsheet to answer them. So instead of answering them on paper like you would when you was revising for these modules, open up a blank spreadsheet and just practice using formulas to do the calculations, to set them up, to maybe make a nice table. You don't normally have to do that in the exam, but it's just going to get you more and more familiar with how to use it. So that's how I would recommend revising from now until we get through to the end. So if I look here with your spreadsheets, that is one part of this exam. The second part is ethics. So we've been doing ethics as our mentee quiz right at the beginning. The third part is recap. So the recap is from those 3 key modules. So they are advanced bookkeeping, final accounts prep, and management accounting costing. Now there's probably some people on the line that haven't actually been able to sit all of those exams yet. So you may be thinking, well, actually, I'm doing that at the same time. Don't think of it as a negative, it's a positive, because it means it's really, really fresh in your mind. Now, I personally think the most tested of these 3 is the costing. So next week, our whole session is going to be focused on costing. So instead of doing an ethics quiz at the beginning, we're actually going to do one on costing, and then we're going to do a spreadsheets task that is on costing. I'm not going to tell you what's on there, because I'm telling you now you need to revise all of those formulas that you actually do. So that's what we're doing next week. But these are the kind of things that I think could come up. So advanced bookkeeping, you've got your list there. Final accounts prep, you've got your list. And management accounting costing, you have your list. So these are the things that I'd make sure that you definitely are really comfortable with. Please don't email me asking for extra questions. I can't send them out. If you are training with a different provider, you have to go back to your old syllabuses. Unless obviously, of course, you want to purchase our material, and then please do get in touch and I'll obviously put you in touch with the right people. But I can't send you out any extra questions. I have had requests for it. If you're not a first intuition student, I'm not allowed to do that. You can understand why, I'm sure. But if you do want to purchase them, obviously get in touch and I'll be able to let you know. I just had a quick question from Lenka. I'm just going to scroll back. So Lenka just asked, can we spell check part 1 via Word? I don't think so. I think if you've done, I think it's all written into the boxes. Has anyone who's sat it before, has anybody who's sat the Synoptic before maybe not been successful know the answer to that question? Can you use spell check on part 1? I don't think you can. I think it's the same as if you do it on the AAT website. I don't think there's a spell check function on there. I will try and find out for you and I'll add it on to next week. No, I don't think you can. I will ask the question and I'll try and find out. Okay, someone's just answered you can't. But they don't hugely mark you down for spelling. So unless it's a word that you can't make it out. Sarah's just said at level 2 you couldn't. You didn't type anything at level 2 though, did you? Really? Obviously at this Synoptic exam, oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, I don't think you can. No, and I actually wouldn't recommend doing it, to be honest, because you're not going to get marked down much by spelling unless it's completely illegible. then it maybe would be marked down. But if it's just something that you've typed wrong or you've left out punctuation, I wouldn't use the time. I wouldn't use the time to be able to do that. Talking about the exam though, not next week, the week after, our Menti quiz is all going to be about the format of the exam. So just in case you're not familiar with it, I'm just going to do a quick Menti quiz on what you can expect from the actual exam if you haven't sat it before. So we will have a little look at that in a couple of weeks' time. So I will add this into our Dropbox, so you'll all be able to access it, so you'll be able to see it. So I'll just make sure you pop these onto your revision list and have a look. Becky's just asked, how many more sessions of these do we have? It's a great question. I was going to talk about it at the end, and I'll quickly just touch on it now, and then we will start on our spreadsheet. So there is 2 more with me. Oh, no, don't worry, it's not 2. 2 more with me, but it has actually been announced that First Intuition are going to be running these sessions till the end of the year, so to the end of December. I don't know whether they're going to start repeating them or not. I'm not sure, and I'm not sure who's going to be doing it, because I'm going literally to the night before I go on maternity leave with these sessions, so I can't actually add any more on unless the baby decides to wait a little bit. But there will be carrying on, and I'm not sure if they're going to be on the same day and who's going to do them, but I will, as soon as I know the information, I'll email it out to you. You don't have to enrol separately for each of my sessions. As soon as you've enrolled, it has carried on. I'm hoping that what's going to happen is that someone's just going to take over this session, so you won't have to re-enroll. That's the ideal plan, but I don't know yet. So I will let you know as soon as I do. At the moment, no one has come forward to take over them. We just need to work it out, only because everybody's doing something every evening. So we just need to work it out as to how that can work. So they will be going on to the end. I don't have any information about what day and what time and how long they're going to go on for, but they will be carrying on in some form. So as soon as I know, I will email you all and let you know. Good. Okay, let's get started on our spreadsheet for this evening then. So hopefully you've been set this. Jake, if you could just ask that question at the end. I just want to make sure that I come back onto the spreadsheets, if that's all right. If we leave any general questions now until after the spreadsheet, I'm happy to answer as many as you need and as many as you have. So I'm not in any rush to disappear, but I just want to make sure that if anyone does have to leave at 8 o'clock, we have covered everything. So any questions not about the spreadsheet, if we could come back to them at the end, that would be great. Okay, so I don't know what's going on my computer today. There we go. Right, I'm just going to send out the file in the chat box just in case you registered this afternoon and you missed it. So I'm just sending this out. You can follow it. Remember, everything will be sent out at the end of the session, and you will be able to look at the recording and go back through it again. So the one we're doing this evening is partnership accounting. Now, I find that partnerships is something that students don't remember very well when they get to the exam, the Synoptic exam, because they probably have sat final accounts prep maybe 6 months or a year ago, and they've just forgotten how to do partnerships. So it's generally done quite badly when we look at our mocks at the Synoptic level. So I picked it because I thought it'd be a really good one for us to revise together before you get into your exam. So we've got some tasks here. So we're going to go through our tasks, and as we do every single week, we're going to make sure that we can tick off each of these individual tasks as we go through. So before I start reading, I always like to have a quick look about what's given to me in the task. So I've got a tab for partnerships, so I'm going to have to fill that in, and I've got a tab for email. Yours is obviously blank, but just to save time in the sessions, I have put my answer in, and we'll go through it and then I'll send it out to you at the end. So there's my spreadsheets. There's my three sheets that I've got. And now I'm going to start having a look at the information in this question. So I'm a management accountant. I work for Magic Limited. Today's date is the 31st of March, 20x4. There's information about how to save the spreadsheet. This will be given to you in the exam. Don't worry too much about following it for this one. But obviously in the exam, do make sure that you are comfortable with how to save it, and also talk to your individual centre about how they do save it and help you upload it. Obviously I can only help with First Intuition students and how we do it at our centre. Now we've got some information we're going to fill in then for our partnership accounting. So on the partnership tab, you've been asked to calculate using formulas where appropriate. So where you can use a formula, you should be. The total profit distributed to each partner using the information below. Now I've told you every way through, I would always read all of the points before I start doing anything. Because if you start on number one and you start getting information thrown in, you could end up missing information later on. So I would always read the whole question and then go back and work through line by line. And I like to highlight when I've dealt with something, so I know that I've dealt with it and I haven't missed anything out. So let's read our information. The statement of profit or loss shows a profit for the year ended 31st of March of 280,000. Annie is entitled to a salary of 25,000 and David does not take a salary. Annie has invested capital of 12,000 and David of 16,000. Annie has taken drawings of 63,500 and David has taken 71,800. Interest on drawings is calculated at 3%. Interest on capital is calculated at 5%. And the residual profit is shared equally between Annie and David. So they get 50% each on the ratio 1:1. We need to use the template on the partnership worksheet to complete the following. We need separate lines for each of the entitlements, and we're going to see in a minute that's actually been set up already for you, but in the exam there may be an expectation that you know how to do that, so make sure that you have learned this layout. The residual profit available for appropriation, each partner's share of that profit, and the amount in total distributed to each partner for the year. So there's quite a lot to do in this question, and if we have a look at the partnership, what we've got here is that we've already been given a layout. Now, I don't know, I can't answer whether you'll be given a layout in the exam. It is in your syllabus, so there is a chance they could give you a blank worksheet and ask you to lay it out. That means if they give you a blank worksheet, as long as you've got all of this information in here, if it's in a different order or it looks slightly different, that'll be fine. You'll still be able to get full marks for this question. It won't need to look exactly the same. But I wanted to test the knowledge from you guys rather than necessarily how you do the layout. Good. Any questions on that so far? Super. Okay, let's start filling in our information then. So, first line, profit for the year. How much profit did this partnership make? So, reading back on the information, how much profit came from the partnership? Super, 280,000, spot on. So right at the beginning of the question, it tells us the statement of profit and loss for the profit is 280,000. So I'm going to pop into my first line, 280,000. Now, a little bit of revision on partnerships. A partnership's not like a company. If a company makes profit, before we've calculated that profit, we've paid out salaries, we've paid out rent, we've paid out rates, we've paid out everything. The profit's at the end. When you're talking for a partnership appropriation account, what you're saying is the partnership's made £280,000, and what they're going to do is they're going to split that money between their partners. So they pay out salaries after they've calculated the profit. So it's actually not the same as a company, and it's really, really important that you guys know that when it comes to doing partnerships accounts. So we only have £280,000 to distribute. You can't, when you've worked out all of these calculations, have this amount down here at 300,000 because you haven't got 300,000. And the amount of times people go through all of the questions, they work it all out, and then this number's bigger than the profit. As soon as you see it, you know that person hasn't passed the question. So my sense check will be that I've got 280 right at the beginning, and when I've distributed everything to my partner, it needs to come back to 280,000, and that's going to be my sense check that I need to come back to. So using that information, let's see if we can fill in these other lines for this appropriation account. So next one then, what was Annie's salary? Can anyone pop in the chat box? Good, perfect, £25,000. Few people have answered for David. What was David's salary? Lovely, nothing, absolutely. He hasn't taken one. And that's quite common in a partnership, because what might happen is that Annie might be the one running the business Laura, you would. So Laura just asked, would you not change the currency? But the question hasn't asked me to do that yet, has it? It doesn't ask me to do that down here. So I'm not doing it yet because I haven't got to that part in the question. I'm going to work through the requirements as I go through. And then when it tells me to change it to currency, I'm going to do that when it does tell me. Because if it doesn't tell me to do it in the question, you don't have to. So you want to, obviously wouldn't waste your time. Also, until I've read that, I don't know what format it wants me to do it in. So I'm going to leave it until I get to that point, because it might be that it wants decimal places. It might be that it doesn't. So I'm not going to do it until I get to that part of the question. Good. So with the salary, that means that Annie's been given 25,000. So she's probably the one that's running the business. It might be that David is a silent partner and he's given some money right at the beginning, but on the day-to-day running, it's down to Annie. So Annie's going to get £25,000 straight away for her time, and David's going to get nothing. But remember, that's coming out of our 280,000. So we've got £280,000. The first £25,000 is going to pay Annie's salary because it's her day job. David probably does something else during the day that he gets some money for. So I'm just going to add this up. So equals sum. So in total then, I've got £25,000 as I go through. So the first £25,000 of that 280 is going to go to Annie. Just pop in the chat box if you've got any questions on that. Great, interest on our drawings then. So I've dealt with the profit, I've dealt with the salary. My next line is my interest on my drawings. Now there's two lines here that I need to be aware of. Annie's taken drawings of 63,500 and David's taken 71,800. It tells me that interest on the drawings is calculated at 3% of the total drawings. So what's happened here is that Annie has taken out of the business £63,500. David has taken out of the business £71,800. So interest on the drawings, what's interesting about that? Can anybody tell me? I know a few people are calculating it, that's great. But what do you also know about that interest on that drawings? Is that going to be paid out of the 280? Perfect. It's a negative figure. Good. So it's added onto the profit. You're absolutely right. Because they've taken those drawings out of the company, they are essentially going to have to pay back some interest. They're going to have to pay back 3% of the interest for the privilege of doing that. So what we're going to do is we're going to show this as a negative figure because the profit has paid out the 25,000, but then we need to add back the interest on the drawings. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to show it as a negative. Hopefully that makes sense. Now there's a few different ways that you can do this on your calculation, but I'm going to type my work into this cell, but instead of starting off with an equals, I'm going to start off with a negative, and that's going to show it as a negative figure in my calculation. So Annie took drawings of 65,300 and the interest on the drawings is at 3%. So that means 63,500. Sorry, I've typed it wrong. I didn't think that number looked right. 63,500. That means that she's going to have to pay back as 1,905. So Sarah just said I did it the other way with the salary being a minus figure, and Nadia's just said you've done it the same. Now I don't think personally that you would lose any marks for that, but if you think about what this is an appropriation account that's going to be sent to HMRC. Do HMRC want profit shown as a negative figure right at the top of their calculations? No, they don't. So this is actually a statement that does get sent to them. Now, I don't think you'd lose any marks if you've done it the other way round, but this is the official way that if you was filling it in, like you was filling in a tax return, then it should be shown that way. So Caroline's just said, shouldn't the salary be a minus in the totals column? Again, when this is submitted to HMRC, that's not what they want to see. This is how they see it. But I think personally, if you've done it that way round in the exam, as long as you've got all of your answers correct, I don't think you'd lose any marks. but this is the official way that you should be doing it when you are filling in an appropriation account and submitting it to HMRC. So don't worry if you've done it the other way round. It's not, so someone's just asked, it looks like a loss with the minus. It's not. This is the way that when you submit it, like you submit your tax return, it will fill in all of your boxes for you. This is how you would fill in your appropriation account at the end of the year, and this is the way round the boxes would go. So if you want to take that up with HMRC that it doesn't make sense, please be my guest and let me know how you get on. But I personally think if you've done it the other way around, you won't get marked down in the exam. So you've still shown your knowledge, but this is the official way that it should be done. Good. So we've done that for our partners. Now let's do the same for David. So David took £71,800 as drawings. He would have to pay round, so negative 71,800 multiplied by 0.03. So he's going to have to pay back 2,154. And I'm just going to drag down that formula that shows me 4,059 in there. Good. Interest on capital is our next line then. So I can now make my drawings in yellow and my interest on drawings also in yellow because I've dealt with both of those lines. So let's have a look at the information that shows me about capital. So Annie invested capital of 12,000 and David invested capital of 16,000. Interest on capital is at 5% of the total capital invested. So capital is the money that they've originally put into the business right at the beginning, and they're going to receive 5% interest on that every single year. That's going to be paid like a salary. So it's going to be paid out of that £280,000. So I'm going to say I've got £12,000 for David, and he's going to receive 5%. And sorry, Annie, and David has paid in £16,000 and he is going to receive 5%. Again, there's different ways that you can do those formulas. Whatever way you do it is absolutely fine as long as it comes back to the right answer. I like to only show you one way to try and not make it too complicated. Equal sum. Add those up, 1,400. Is there any questions at that point on any of those three? Now, I know some people have done it a different way around. As long as your numbers come back at the bottom to the end, you won't lose marks for it. But that is the official way that you would fill in a partnership appropriation account if it was being sent off to Companies House. Good. Perfect. Let me just read this question from Sarah before we carry on. So Sarah, is it okay if you put the full amounts of capital in a separate cell and refer to it? That's absolutely fine. Yeah, no worries at all. So if you put them over here and refer to them, that would be fine. As long as you've got the right information in here, that's what they're looking for. And in fact, what you're doing there is you're just showing cell referencing. So that's absolutely fine. Not a problem whatsoever. Okay, so we've dealt with our capital and we've dealt with our interest at 5%. So we've now got this last bit here that we need to deal with. So with our partnership, we started off with £280,000 and we have paid out, so if I do minus sum, we've paid out £25,000 in salary. They've paid back £4,059 and then we've paid out £1,400 for our interest on capital. So I've done my profit minus the sum of those three items. If I close off my brackets, that means that I've got £257,659 left to split on my profit share. So remember, I can't give out any more than that because I've only got 280,000. So out of that, I have to pay my salary, have to pay my interest on drawings, have to pay my capital, and now I've got how much I've got left. If you've done that formula in any other way, so you've done it equally, that is absolutely fine. So if you've done 280 minus 25,000 minus that's absolutely fine. And I'll say it as we go through. If you've done anything in a different way, but you've got the same answer, unless it's specifically told you to use a formula, that's going to be okay in the exam. So if it tells you to use a VLOOKUP and you don't use a VLOOKUP, you will lose the marks. But if it just tells you to look it up from another sheet and you do it in a different way, you won't lose the marks. So there's absolutely no requirement there to use that type of formula. So if you've used a different one, you'll be fine. Okay, so next final stage then is we need to work out how we separate that profit. So we've got 257,659 and the question tells us that they share it in the ratio 1:1, which means they receive 50% of that profit that's left each. So there's lots of different ways that you can do this. You can divide it by 2, times it by 1. Obviously, that's how you'd do it if it was like 7:3, for example. But you can just take 50% here. So if you've done it in any other way, it doesn't matter. You'll still get all of the marks. But I'm just going to split it by 50% as we go through. So I'm going to say, right, we have got 257,659. 50% of that is going to go to Annie. And I'm going to do exactly the same again. And 50% of that is going to go to David. As I do a sum here, that figure should come back to my residual profit, and it does. So I can see there that I have only split out how much was able to be split. The last part of the question then is to work out the total distribution to each partner. So how much in total each partner has received. Now, all I've got to do here is just sum up each of these columns. So Annie is going to receive £152,524.50. I can drag that across. David is going to receive £127,475. And then just as a sense check, if I sum up those two figures, remember we said that that needed to come back to the 280,000, which it does, which means that I have accurately split out my profit between those two people, Annie and David. Is there any questions on that before we move on to the next part? All clear? Happy? Good. Brilliant. So just for the big questions that came out of that then, if you've got minuses in any other place, it will be fine. So that's absolutely fine. Obviously, if we go through, if you've done it in different ways, but this is the official way that it would be actually submitted to Companies House, and it also goes to HMRC as well, because you have to obviously pay tax on that money as well. So revise that obviously in your textbooks. It comes from previous modules, so have a look through it. Make sure you're also comfortable with things like the control account. So make sure you know what goes in and out of those if you're not sure. So just add that onto your revision list, but that's the way that it sets up. Okay, right. So we've now dealt with all of those. So I've made all of those yellow. Using the partnership template, I've done separate lines for each of those. I've got the residual profit available for appropriation. I've shown each partner's share of that residual profit, and I've also done the total amount distributed to each partner. So there's just a question that's just come in before we move on. So can I just show again how to do the profit sharing? So are you happy with where that 257,659 came from? Perfect. So all I've just done is I've just split it 50% to Annie and 50% to David. So because it was a 1:1 ratio, I've just given them half of it each. If it was obviously like a 7:3, you'd divide it by 10 and times it by 7 and times it by 3. Are you happy with how I've just done that? Perfect. Good. Super. The last step just adds them up. So it just shows how much distribution has gone to each partner. So Annie's got 25,000 salary. She's paid back 1,905. She's received £600 of interest on capital, and she's received 128,829 of profit share. So that just adds it up, and it just says how much she's received in total. Same for David, and I've just done a sense check there to make sure they both come back to the profit. Super. Okay, so I'm happy that we've done that big task there. this is where we're going to format now onto our cells. Now remember, you don't want to lose these marks because these could be quite easy marks for you in the exam, because obviously they come up in every single exam, but they can ask you to do it differently. They can ask you to have 1,000 separator, they can ask you to use the currency, they can ask you to have 1 decimal, 2 decimals, they can ask you to show the minus sign or in brackets. So you need to really just make sure you've carefully read it, because they're not difficult, because by now you've done it hundreds of times, but you could end up losing marks just by not carefully reading it. So custom format your statement to show GBP currency with the 1,000 separator, no decimals, a black font for positive, and any negative figures should be read with a minus sign. So there's different ways as to how you can do this. I'll answer that question in a moment. The way that I would do it is highlight them all, right click, go down to format cells. Now, I know lots of you are going to start typing in the chat box that there's different ways to do this. I know there is. I'm going to show you one way so that if someone doesn't know how to do this, this size will fit all. This will always help you answer. There is lots of different ways to do this. And if you know a different way, that's brilliant. Don't change it. But there will be people on the group that don't know how to do it. So I'm going to show them one way that shows them will always work every time. So just to recap there, we've highlighted, right click, and we've gone to format cells, down to custom at the bottom. Now what you'll see is there's lots of really hideous looking things. So dash, 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 dot, 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 etc. It looks a little bit like Morse code. Now what you're looking for is you're looking for one that's got a hash and then a comma, because that's going to show you your 1,000 decimals. This one here is going to show me no decimal places because there is nothing after the dot. So if we just remind ourselves, it says no decimal, so that one could work. So if I just go back to that format cells, I want one, if you remember, that says 1,000 separator, so I've got hash and 1,000, no decimal places, so there should be nothing written after dot 00, so that would show me 2 decimal places. I don't want that. It wants it in red for a negative figure, so that's ticking that box as well, and it wants a minus in front of it if it's a minus figure. The only thing this one's missing is there's no currency sign. So I'm just going to actually tick this one instead, because you can see in front of it is a pound sign. So that means that it's going to show it as a currency. Now, has anyone got any questions on that? Because that's quite fiddly if you haven't seen it before. Lots of you would have seen it, but if you haven't seen it before, has anyone got any questions on that? Good. So as I press OK, I can just sense check. So it says a currency figure, 1,000 separator, no decimals, black font for positive, red sign with a minus. There we go. Happy days. So Lenka's asked, if we did the negative the other way around, would you lose marks? What do you think? Can you still do that requirement? Can you still make your positive figures black? Can you still make your negative figures red? Absolutely. So no, you wouldn't. You wouldn't lose any additional marks because you can still fulfill all of that requirement. You've just got extra negatives. So no, absolutely no marks would be lost for that. Good. Perfect. So let me know in the chat box if you have got anything in there. Caroline said she used conditional formatting. It just makes it harder, to be honest. I don't think that you'd actually lose any marks for doing that because it does say custom format. I think you'd actually be okay, but it just makes it harder. So you don't have to do that. Whenever it's asking for that requirement, that's the way you can always do it. So I wouldn't, unless it says to use conditional formatting, I wouldn't worry about using conditional formatting. I'd keep it simple. But personally, I don't think that you'd actually lose any marks for that because you're still fulfilling the requirements. I would, if I was marking that in one of my mocks, I'd still give you the marks for it. But I'm not an AAT marker, so I'm not sure. Good. Last requirement then is our email, and then we'll open it up to any other questions. David has contacted your company to ask some questions regarding your workings. He was under the impression that he would be entitled to half the profits and receiving £140,000. Complete the email to David to explain your workings, ensuring to include the following. So how much of the profit share he is entitled to, the impact of taking a salary from the company, the calculations for drawings, your calculation for capital, and the profit sharing agreement. Now, I've actually gone through how we calculate each of these as we've gone through. So I'm going to read the email to you, and then I'll save it on the Dropbox. If anyone wants to look at it in any more detail, you can. Your answer will not look the same as mine because we are not the same person. We do not share a brain. So it will be different. What you're looking for is, have you answered these requirements and have you explained it carefully and correctly? Then you'll still be able to get the marks. So to David, I understand you've requested some information about the calculation of your share of profit. I'd be happy to help you with this. If you write an email, you should always introduce the person, and you should also say hello. It's rude if you don't. So please make sure when you're doing this that you are addressing them as if you were writing an email to your boss, for example. For the year ended 31st of March X4, the partnership has made a profit of 280,000. You are entitled to 127,426. I understand that you thought you'd be entitled to half of the profit, so 140,000, and I wanted to explain why this isn't the case. Out of the profit, we first pay the salary to Annie of £25,000. You are not entitled to a salary. A salary in a partnership is not like a company, it is the first appropriation of profit, which means out of the 280,000, the salary will first be paid. In addition to a salary, you and Annie are both entitled to 5% interest on capital that you initially invested in the company. This is also paid out of profit before the final profit is calculated. This is £600 for Annie and £800 for yourself. During the year, you and yourself and Annie have both withdrawn drawings from the partnership. Drawings are a withdrawal of cash from the company and interest must be paid. Interest is calculated at 3% and will be paid back to the partnership before the final calculation. Annie owes 1,905 and you owe 2,154. After accounting for these adjustments, it leaves a residual profit of 257,659. This is the amount which is shared equally on a 1-to-1 ratio and gives you a share of the profit of 128,830 and a total appropriation, because obviously you've got to pay back those drawings, of 127,476 after accounting for the drawings and capital. Please let me know if you have any other further questions, AAT student. Now, I've read through that reasonably quick because we have gone through the reasons behind each of those as we've gone through the requirements. If you do have any questions on those, obviously I am going to upload this to Dropbox. There is a couple of questions that have come in, so if anyone has got any questions, I'll be happy to answer those. If the question is, I've written something slightly different, would I get a mark? The answer is probably yes. You're not going to have it looking exactly how I've written it because we're not the same person. So let's just have a look. Laura said rounds to 30 and 30 adds 60 with no decimals, 59. Looks strange. Unfortunately, that's just life. So that is just life, that sometimes the roundings don't work. It works in an exam. They'll know that and you won't lose any marks from it. So that's absolutely fine. Kira has written in the exam, if you had to write an email, would you put AAT student on your name? It used to be a requirement that it had to be anonymous. I don't think that is necessarily the case anymore, but I would just stick with AAT student. I wouldn't put your own name on there. Normally we do try to keep them anonymous. Ingrida said, can I copy some text from the task of the email instead of typing? If you want to, absolutely no, as long as it allows you to do it on the software, I don't see why not, but obviously you need to go through. The next two questions are back on the other spreadsheet. So has anyone got any questions on this email before I go back and have a look at the previous task and answer these two questions? Good, okay. So you can obviously look at that again on the spreadsheet if you need to. So just going back, Becky said, can you go through your method of custom formatting again from the other tab? So absolutely. So you highlight all of your information, right click and go down to format cells. Go down to custom, and then you need to scroll through your list. This probably will look slightly different for you. Scroll through your list to find one that's got a currency. Unfortunately, I can't make this any bigger on the screen, I don't think. No, I can't. That's got the pound sign at the front, which means it's currency. It will then have a hash and then a comma, which means that it's shown in 1,000 decimals. So this bit before the semicolon is what it does if it's a positive number. This bit after the semicolon shows what it does if it's a negative number. And if it's a negative number, it's going to show it in red with a minus symbol, with a currency and 1,000 separator, and no decimals, because it doesn't show. If you see this one here, that's got .00, that means it would show 2 decimals. Becky, if you just write to let me know if that works, and then I can help you again if it doesn't. So Becky just said, is there a way to preview it without pressing OK? No, just practice, because that's quite a common one. So just make sure that you can find it. Kira's just said, could you manually write another colour at the beginning? Yes, you can, but I don't think they'll ask you to do anything other than black or red. But you can, absolutely. I've never done anything other than black or red. If I was to do anything other than black or red, I'd just use the colours up here. We're accountants, we use black or red. Okay, Emily, can you show me how to do the D8 calculation again? D8. Yes, absolutely. So there's a few ways that you can do it. The way that I've done it is I've said D4 minus the sum of salary, interest on drawings, or interest on capital. You don't have to use a sum here. You could just minus the 25, minus the 4,059, and minus the 1,400. You don't have to use a sum. You could just do those individually. You wouldn't lose any marks for doing that. Emily, does that make sense? Are you happy with that? Good, perfect. Let me just check there's no more questions, and then we'll look, there's one more requirement left. Yes, you can watch the previous session. So I've mentioned that at the beginning. At the end, you'll get sent a link for everything. So you'll get sent that at the end. Glad that's going to be easier. Caroline, I don't think you're going to need that really. Caroline's just asked, because I've totally forgotten, is interest drawings classified as receipt or income or interest? Yes, it would be, but you're not going to have to do a set of partnership accounts in this exam. I would be very surprised if you did. So, but yes, it would. But from the point of view of the partnership, you're correct. Okay, so let's just highlight all of these because we've done all of those requirements. And the last thing that we've got, if anyone does need to drop off, because we have gone over for a few minutes, I don't think we've ever been on time for this session. This is all being recorded. So if you do need to leave, as soon as it's all finished, it will be sent over to you on your notes. Lenka, no, the distribution isn't the current account. The current account is different. So look back on your notes, the current account would be different. So they're not the same thing. Okay, so if anyone does need to drop off, as soon as this is finished, the recording will be sent out to you so you can catch up on the last 5 minutes in your own time. Last bit then, we need to print the email on one page using a landscape view. We need to take a screenshot of the print preview and paste it onto a new worksheet in your current workbook. And we're going to rename it Screenshot. So we've done this quite a few times. And we're going to keep doing it because it comes up in most of the exams. So if I go to File, Print, you will see that actually it doesn't fit on one page. It's printing over 3 different pages. So you can see there, just in case this person needs to drop off, I've mentioned it quite a few times. At the end of this email, you will be sent a email with all of the previous links, all of the previous recordings and all of the previous information. So just in case you do need to drop off, everything will be sent to you as soon as we finish the session. Okay, so if I go to File, Print, what it will do is it will show me how this looks. So I can see that actually at the moment it's printing on 3 pages, and I don't want that to be the case. I want it to print on one page and I want it to print on a landscape view. Now, the easiest way to do this is just to change your portrait to landscape. And you can see there it's still printing on 4 pages, but a couple of pages look a little bit ugly, don't they? A little bit of information there. So right at the bottom in our scaling box, I'm just going to change it from no scaling to fit onto 1 sheet. So now you can see that it fits 1 page of 1 page. I'm just going to hide the chat box for a moment. So I'm going to take a screenshot and it comes up on my screen. But what I now need to do is just press screenshot on my keyboard. So print screen on my keyboard. That then puts that into my box. And as I go back into my notes, I'm going to go onto a new tab. And you can either then press Control V for paste, or you can right click and press paste. So it's just a normal paste. It's a normal paste as to how you've done it. It just sits it in. So you just press copy and paste on your keyboard. That's absolutely fine. Anyone that doesn't know what Control V is, it's a shortcut. I don't like to teach shortcuts as much in this course because it's difficult for you guys to see. So for me, I would just say, if you right click and press paste, it's going to paste onto that screen for you. Make sure it shows that it prints 1 page of 1 page. That's the bit that they want to see. That's the bit that's really important. And it shows that it's pasted it all onto 1 page. Last bit then is just to rename this screenshots on that information. So Hannah's just asked me to repeat it. Someone's just wrote, I would adjust the margins as well. You can if you want, but it doesn't ask you to and you don't need to. So you're going to use time to do it. But if you've got time, knock yourself out, doesn't matter. If it asks you to do that, then I would do it. But if it doesn't ask you, you don't have to. So I'm just going to do that one more time, just for Hannah, who's asked in the chat box. So File, Print. If I just take it off, originally that's how it showed. So it showed here that it went on 3 different pages. It wants me to do it on 1 page by 1 page, and it wants me to fit it into a landscape orientation. So I'm going to change my portrait to landscape, but it still shows it on 4 pages. And on my scaling, I'm going to go fit sheet to 1 page. And that now would print onto 1 page if you wanted that. I need to take a screenshot. So I'm just going to, on my keyboard, find where it says print screen, press on print screen. That now puts that into my paste box. And as I go back into my notes, on a new work tab, worksheet, I'm going to right click and I'm going to press paste. That pastes in my screenshot, and at the bottom it shows that it's on 1 page by 1 page. Hannah, does that answer your question? Perfect, good. And now I have finished all of those requirements. So I can go back, nothing's left off. It's all highlighted in yellow. I don't have to remove the yellow if I don't want to. If you want to, that's absolutely fine, but you won't lose any marks if you do leave it there. But it just gives you a sense check to make sure that you've answered all of those requirements. Okay, so that is the end of our session. I'm happy to open it up now to any questions. I think there was a question earlier that I said, could you pull in at the end? I'll leave the recording on for a minute, just in case there's a useful question for everyone. But thank you to everybody that's dropping off. That's fantastic. And hopefully I'll see you all next week. You don't see a print screen on your keyboard. Unfortunately, because I can't see it, it's hard for me to answer that. What will probably be the case is it will probably be in one of your function keys, so F1, F2, F3, F4. I would have a look and have a little Google to find it on your computer. It will be in there somewhere, but it could be that you have to press Control F5 or something along those lines. Have a little look, ask someone that's familiar with computers. It will be in there somewhere and you will find it. Martina, you've asked about the exam. How much time do you have to do the Excel? That's actually our session in 2 weeks, what we're going to go through, but you have 1 hour and 45 minutes. So it's 1 hour and 45 minutes to complete this and upload it, but not next week, the week after. Our Ment is all going to be about how the exam's actually set up. So there'll be lots of information there for you and you can grab that. Thanks, Damien. See you soon. Thank you. Good. Hannah, you just said, can I send by email all the sessions for level 3? What do you mean, Synoptic or every level 3 that's happening? Because that's quite a lot. See you next week. Lovely. Lenka's asked, can I show how to upload the spreadsheets when you finish? No, I can't, because it's only on the AAT software. Now, at First Intuition in Chelmsford, we are allowed to actually help you with that. So what it happens in Chelmsford is we save it onto the desktop, and then you follow the instructions on the screen. And if you do struggle, the invigilator is allowed to help you. That's a question you're going to have to actually put forward to your centre where you're going to sit your exam. So if you have got a specific question on that, if you contact them, they'll be able to help you with it. Hannah, like I've said quite a few times, right when we finish this out, I'm going to send you an email, and it's going to have on there a link to all of the old recordings, all of the old pre-work. It's all set up by days. So as soon as this finishes and I get the recording for this evening, you'll have that with all of that information. What it will also have on there is also some information about our mock product that we have as well. So there was another question there. Lenka said that you asked, they cannot. Unfortunately, I can't show you it because I can't show you it without getting onto the real exam, and I can't get onto the real exam. So it won't be that difficult though. You know how, if you can, I don't know, you can't see my screen, I don't think, on the chat box, but when I go down to there, it just says file. What you basically do is just save it onto the desktop, and then you just upload it onto the AAT website. So it isn't too difficult and it isn't too hard. It should be okay for you to work out, but I can't show you it because I can't get onto the real software, unfortunately, to be able to show you. Jill just asked, as you said, we should not have to work out appropriation, but we may have to task 1 to work it out. You will have to work out the appropriation potentially if it does come up, and it could be in task 1 or task 2. So any of these things could be in either of the tasks. So it could be in the spreadsheets part, or it could be in task 1. Hopefully that answers your question, Jill. Just let me know if that wasn't what you was asking. Got a question privately here. Can you sit the exam with your company if you're not with your company if you're not sitting with you? And do you know when the exams will be available? So you can sit exams with First Intuition, but at the moment we are prioritising students whose exams we had to postpone. So at the moment it's not open for external students to be able to book because we had to obviously postpone so many exams. So for July, we are catching up on all of those people. We are starting to sit exams in a couple of weeks. So they are going ahead, and we are putting on quite a few sessions to try and catch up with all of those. So you will be able to, at some point, be able to sit the exams with us. I'm not sure where you live. We are based in Chelmsford, but we do have centres all around the country. That being said, I know that some of the centres aren't opening exams yet because it's not safe to do so. So they share offices with other companies, and they just can't social distance in that scenario. So you absolutely can sit exams in centres that you're not studying with, but you'll just have to contact the most local one to you. So if you let me know where you live, I'll be able to obviously give you an idea as to what one's the most closest. Becky, was process costing on your revision sheet at the beginning? I don't think it was. No, job and batch costing is, but I don't think that job and batch costing and process costing would be very easy on a spreadsheet. That is my own personal opinion though. It's not obviously from the AAT. I think they'd be quite difficult to be able to obviously practice, but that doesn't mean that it won't come up in section 1. So you do need to make sure that you are comfortable with all of those parts, Becky. So go back to your previous notes and obviously have a practice. You can do them on a spreadsheet. You can do anything on a spreadsheet. So you can obviously practice that on your spreadsheets as you go through. Fran, I need to go through this again with the recording. Went wrong. Okay, let me know if you've got any questions on that. Obviously, you've got my email and you can come back to me. Lenka, there are 2 parts in the box on the AAT side I cannot do. Okay, hopefully keep practicing and you'll be okay. Sarah's asked, have I ever seen a T account format in a spreadsheet? No, I haven't, but that doesn't mean that they won't. It doesn't mean they won't. So it could come up, but I'm not sure it's a very good use of spreadsheet skills. So I'm not sure whether they will. Thank you very much there. Uploading the Excels is like applying for jobs when you upload your CV in the agency terminal. I don't know who's written that because it's come up as Rebecca Empson, but that's fantastic. Thank you very much for sending that over. I don't think it'll be too different. Rachel, I don't know where Walsall is. I'm really sorry. North, south, east, west. I don't know where it is. I'm sorry. Teresa, not related to this module, but I bought the costing mock exam and there's no video. Do you know if it'd be added? If you email aat@fi.co.uk, which will be on the bottom of that website that I sent out, they'll be able to help you all of that information. I'm not actually involved in doing the costing mock, so I don't know what's going to be happening. Another question again from another Rebecca, so I don't actually know who wrote it. Are there any Synoptic mocks available? There is a new first intuition mock package, which is £15. I can see Becky's written that underneath. It's got 2 mocks and some feedback on it. On my email that I'm going to send out to you in a moment, I actually sent it out this afternoon. At the bottom, there is information on the mock package as to what's involved in it and how you book it if you do want to buy it. So if you have asked that question, there is all loads of information coming out to you in a moment. ABC costing. I don't know, to be honest, Lenka. The questions about what's going to come up, I just don't know. I don't think ABC would be a great test of spreadsheet knowledge because it's all about just separating it really and then adding up the boxes. But they could do something really clever with it. But it could still come up in part 1. So it could still come up in the first part of the exam. So I wouldn't leave anything out, to be honest, because anything could be tested. But I think in terms of spreadsheets, ABC is probably less likely to be one of the tested ones. But I don't know, and I don't want to say yes or no because I just don't know. Rachel, you're in Birmingham. So we've got Leeds, we've got Peterborough. I think that's quite near Birmingham, isn't it? But I don't think either of those have started up exams yet. If you go onto the First Intuition website and look at locations, you'll be able to find them, and you'll also be able to find other centres that are able to sit your exam there. So the exam will be the same wherever you sit it. Obviously, you'll just go into a room and you'll be able to do it. Unfortunately, remote invigilation for the Synoptic is not probably going to come in because of the spreadsheet element. So we don't see that it is coming in at the moment. Okay, let's have a look. EOQ in spreadsheets, again, I'm not sure how they would test it. I've just put it in there as it may come up, but we're not going to actually cover that in spreadsheets because I don't know how they would test it either, Sarah. It's a good question. Lovely, see you next week. You're all welcome, thank you. Looks like I'm on my last question there. Do FI do classroom or only online? We do classroom, but obviously at the moment, we're not able to go in, and we've made the decision to not go back to classroom until the new year, so from January 2021, which is why these revision sessions are going all the way through to the end of the year. But we do classrooms, but you won't be able to book any until the new year. So if that is something that you're interested in January, obviously have a look. You're very welcome, see you next week, and you're very welcome, see you next week. Lovely, so if anyone has got any other questions, I'll hang around for a few moments, but I'm just going to turn off the recording and turn off the video. Thank you very much for all of the interactivity and the great questions. Hopefully, if you're watching this on a recording, the questions did make sense to go through them. I do like to keep them recorded just in case they help anybody else. And I'll see you all next week, and I'll send out the pre-work in a moment. Thank you very much.